Hi, I'm Kevin Miller. This is a podcast for your personal evolution. In this episode, relational attachments. Why are you attached? Should you be? And what is most healthy? So I continue to interest myself with the concept of attachments, how and why we attach to anything. In this episode, I'm focusing specifically on relational attachments again. The concept is that in our childhood, we learned how to best attach to our primary caregivers and others. And as no parent or caregiver or person is perfect, we have to hypothesize, or we do, that nobody learns how to attach in perfect health. We adapt and we cope. It may serve us at one point in life, but generally that same way that we formed as a youngster may not serve us later. And unless we've served us as well later. And unless you've given specific attention and done the work to understand yourself, chances are high, if not 100%, that you have some attachment styles and habits that are not serving your relationships best today. So I start off questioning how attached we should even be, if at all, and looking first at how we attach to ourselves. My expert guest is Jessica Baum, Baum. Jessica is a renowned psychotherapist who is specialized in trauma, attachment theory, and interpersonal neurobiology. Jessica feels that connection to ourselves and others is at the heart of healing, and she uses a range of modalities to help individuals and couples find health and wholeness. She's founder of the Relationship Institute of Palm Beach. It's a private group practice, and she leads a global coaching company offering support to clients worldwide. Jessica previously authored a best-selling book, Anxiously Attached is what that was called. And it established her as a trusted voice in the healing of attachment wounds and building secure, fulfilling relationships. Her new book is called Safe, an attachment-informed guide to building more secure relationships, which was the catalyst for this conversation that you're about to hear between us. You can just type Jessica Baum, B-A-U-M, type it in anywhere. You'll find all her social media, her website. If you buy her book, new book, Safe, and go to her website, she has some free gifts for you there as well. All right. Coming up next, my conversation with Jessica Baum about relational attachments and how to grow in health. Let's evolve ourselves today. Jessica, just the title of your book, Safe. I just am really focused on that as a culture with myself, with the culture. What is that? Why are we so preoccupied? I think I kind of disappoint myself with how preoccupied I see that I have been with protecting myself as I became aware of that nature of mine. Just realized, kind of looking at myself and self-awareness going, oh my gosh, the amount of the connections that I make or the communications that I do have so much to do with my own self-protection, self-preservation. And then I look at the culture and I feel like we're awash in it. So a book titled Safe should be the number one bestseller of all time, because it seems like that. Is there anything else we desire more?
Yeah, I definitely think you hit the nail on the head. I think I picked a word that's floating around the internet a lot. And I think when you think of what do people want in relationships, they just want to feel safe. And yet feeling safe and building inner security and having safe and secure relationships is so nuanced and complicated and layered and deserved a whole book. But I think it's something that we all crave because many of us have experienced not feeling safe in relationship and how miserable and how confusing that can be, and want to better understand why did I feel so unsafe in this relationship? What was that about? And, and of course it's an attachment book. So it's an attachment informed guide to building more secure. So safe and secure are really linked to what as a culture we want as we have become more aware of attachment patterns and how much they impact our relationships and ourselves.
Okay. I got questions, some that I haven't addressed before. And I'm going to start off just with that attachment. So bear with me a second. I'm going to mix a couple. Well, to me, it feels mixed. I mean, we've got attachment styles, relational, like what we're kind of focused on here. Bob Rosen, we had on the show not long ago, and he has a book called Detached, and it was more about attachments just to anything, just our attachments to life. It could be to our job or our Porsche or a person or whatever it might be, and discussing that. So I'm first off going to ask you on my curiosity just about attachments in general, and how do you look at that? I mean, when we're a kid, as you talk about, we grow up and my gosh, we don't know any better. We want to attach. I mean, I had 7 biological kids, and the first thing you do is attach them to mom, literally to the breastfeeding. I mean, that's a big thing to get them attached. So it's natural from that standpoint on. But then as we go forward in life, do you still see the necessity of attachment remaining just as high, or to some degree, should it lessen or evolve?
It's just as high. I mean, so attachment is a biological imperative. And when we're born, we need attachment and connection just as much as we need food and water, because we're still developing and we need our parents' their system to fully develop, and we need to feel attached and connected to. But we need to feel attached and connected to throughout our whole lives. Like that need, that very primary vulnerable need to feel connected to and attached is something that we need throughout the whole lifespan. It does not go away. Becoming super independent or detached is against our biological wiring and how we are really set up to thrive.
That you just came to the word that I told you, I'm just going to question some stuff here. These are the things that I find myself wrestling with. And on that, do I need, strong attachments with other people? I've almost kind of come to the side of after having violated, I think, been so dependent upon someone else, my former wife, being so dependent, the temptations to come over on the other side and go, I don't want to be attached. I don't want to, how much can I attach to me and take care of my own survival, but then look to others to thrive? Is there a fair delineation?
Yeah, I mean, without getting in too much of your relationship, it sounds like the attachment that you had felt draining or not thriving or not in a place of interdependency. And
Yeah.
so that kind of attachment can wear on us. And that's not what we're talking about when we talk about secure interdependent attachment. When we're having secure interdependent attachment, we depend very much on others, but it thrives, it helps us thrive and expand and create other attachments. It doesn't make us feel scared and limited and drained. So maybe that will help you better understand the question a little bit.
And I'm going to assume it's elementary to you, but will you unpack a little bit more how you differentiate between interdependent and I'm going to say codependent?
Interdependent is when I can depend on you and you can depend on me, but we don't have fear in our relationship. We're not controlled by fear. We're not trying to control each other's behaviors. We're allowing you to be uniquely you and grow and move within the world. And you're allowing me to be uniquely me and grow within the world. And we can have rupture and repair and conflict, and we can have other relationships that are important to us. We don't have to just, stay in our bubble. Where I don't like to use the word codependency, but for lack of a better word, but different attachment patterns can leave us in protective behaviors that are more fear-based around, I need to behave this way around this person in order to get this need met. And we're having these exchanges where the next thing we know, we're not very free and we feel like kind of enslaved to each other in that way for survival purposes.
I help myself with that. Yeah, I think I've looked at my own experience as, again, my story that we were 2 sides of a table with 2 legs apiece, and we came together to, clunk together. Oh my gosh, now we're a complete table, kind of the Jerry Maguire, you complete me kind of thing. As opposed to today, I'm looking and going, how does that make sense? Like, you're not a whole person by yourself. Can we be 2 complete tables that come together, fully standing, self-sustaining, but come together and make a bigger table, kind of to the thriving concept? How's that track?
Well, I have a problem with that theory
Okay.
because it makes me feel like I have to be this complete self-sufficient person in order to be in relationship. And that's not actually how it works either. But what you might be kind of, maybe this might help. So if we have really early, if we have really early wounding, really early, those types of wounds can make it very hard for us to be in intimate relationships that's thriving without some personal work. And so there are things that some people struggle with in terms of early wounding where it makes it very hard for them to show up and be available for another human. But most of the time, we're all flawed and have adaptations and are in the process of trying to heal and become whole. And we don't have to reach some destination in order to be in relationship, right? And I talk about this in the book, I talk about trauma bonding in the book, which might be like what you're
Yeah.
talking about. Like when two things happen, when a scared part of us gets activated and we keep running towards another person to soothe us, which I think we've all done,
Yep.
and they can't do that, essentially we are stuck in a trauma loop because we are bringing our wounds to someone and expecting them to heal them, to make them go away. And we actually need to be healing those wounds by bringing them to people who have safety and can have a container and help us hold them. But I think a lot of what we do unconsciously is we go towards people to try to fix them or get us out of the state of, angst, thinking that our partner, because they did it in the beginning of the relationship, they should do it now. We can get stuck in those patterns of running towards an unavailable partner, expecting them to help us feel better, and then they don't, and then we get really frustrated. The other thing is sometimes we stay in relationships where there's early wounding, where we over identify with our partner's wounds. And so we want to take care of them. We want to fix them. We want to do all those things, but we under identify with what's going on and what needs to be healed within ourselves. So there's a lot of enmeshment in those relationships. And so it can be very confusing. So those are two examples of like, needing the space to really start to notice like what is mine and what is my history and what is mine to heal and what am I bringing to relationship and how can I bring that awareness there. And sometimes that does require, that's what SAFE does. It helps you kind of become more conscious and aware of these things.
Okay. So looking at, you refer a lot to childhood wounds. I resonate with childhood wounds. I also wondered what your feeling was on wounds, and is there just, would you say, maladaptive patterns? So wounds, are those different, or do you look at them as one of the same?
I don't like using the word maladaptive. I think that everything is brilliantly adaptive. And if we have a behavior that we're doing that we don't like, if we get to the wound and the reason why we have that behavior, it's actually quite brilliant most of the time and totally understandable. So I don't use that verbiage. We have these adaptive strategies to survive. And some of those strategies and adaptations developed in early childhood, and we will do the best we can with what we've received and how we've learned to stay in connection, how we've learned to survive. And we will take those adaptations and we will do the best we can in another relationship. And sometimes, we can say, oh, those, maladaptive behaviors are so negative, but it's like, I call them protectors. Like they're usually things that we needed to develop in order to survive or get by or protect us from our core wounds. So I try to turn towards them with a little bit more compassion and understanding rather than judgment of our own self. We don't need more of that, right?
Okay. Yeah. On that note, I think I probably struggle with some of the childhood wounds. Maybe I'm still not in touch with it as much as I should to see that they're wounds, but I feel like I look at my parents, I think, gosh, they're great people in my perspective and did well. I think I tapped into, when I do X, Y, Z, you talked about this in the book, being a people pleaser. Ingrid Clayton, you endorsed your book, and her book on fawning was tremendous to me. I resonated with it much more than even the fight, flight, freeze. And I realized that in doing that, I got Dad's approval, and I liked
Mhm.
it. I realized, gosh, when I act in that, mature way and engage with the adults, I get the other guys, I get their approval as well. Feels pretty good. It's like applause. And man, I just took it hook, line, and sinker. If I hadn't, did I have to survive? I don't know. I don't think my dad ever experienced anything more. I just kind of figured out, ooh, 1+1=2. I like that. Feels good. And I embraced that. And then I went forward with decades of performing, not being super authentic, not being real honest with feelings at all. I just did what got the approval. So I didn't connect to it as a wound, but maybe it still manifested that way.
Well, it's an adaptation.
Okay.
You learn to leave your body and sense what somebody else's need is. So you brilliantly adapted to read the book, The Room, which is more of an anxious attachment style, is that if I can leave my system and figure out what you need and please you, I can stay in connection. Because remember, connection is a biological imperative. So what your system did is it brilliantly learned if I people please, I can stay in connection and I can get my needs met. So if
Mm-hmm.
you didn't have people pleasing, you probably wouldn't have gotten the basic needs met that you needed to meet. Obviously, you needed your parents to slow down, connect with you, help you connect with your inner world, help you develop a relationship in there. And they didn't. So you adapted to them to still try to get your needs. Yes, it might have caused you a lot of pain. Yes, we look at that at that way of coping as like, oh my God, I'm such a people pleaser. But at the end of the day, that way of adapting actually helped you brilliantly survive. And the more that we can be with your core self and your wounds, the less, and the fears around not people pleasing and not getting that connection, because it's all about connection. The more we can be with that reality, the less people pleasing you will likely have to do moving forward.
Okay. On that note, then, you have this is a quote right out of your book in regards to parenting. And you said, when, in essence, it was about presence, having presence. And you said, when they are, parents in this case, are more interested in finding out who we are than in needing us to be a certain way. That rings true with my childhood, but I'll tell you, Jessica, it rings true for especially my early parenting. I didn't know how to be present for me. I was just a tool to get things done, to fawn, to get approval, whatever. I didn't check in with me. I was unaware. So I didn't know to do it with my kids, and thought that my good Christian, father role was to train them up in the way that they should go. And especially my first three kids, I was not, as you said, present. And I would say, my tendency is to think there's not a whole lot of people who grew up with caregivers, parents or whatever, that really came across with a primary interest to understand them as opposed to lead and guide them in a certain direction. Thoughts?
Yeah, no, I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head with that. I mean, we're talking about intergenerational trauma now.
Mm-hmm.
So you could provide with your kids only what you've experienced. And so if you didn't experience true, genuine presence, someone looking into Kevin, trying to help Kevin understand what's going on in his body, sitting with Kevin, helping him sit through uncomfortable feelings, tapping in with him every day, a feeling of we in partnership, a we with parenting. If you didn't receive that as a child, and that goes all the way to infancy, you can't give that to your children. So we can only give what we receive. So that's part of the healing and building inner security, is that we need to receive now what we didn't get then in order to heal the wound. So if the wound was abandonment, or the wound was, and people pleasing, or what you're explaining is actually neglect and abandonment, because they weren't seeing into your emotional world. They weren't seeing into Kevin. They didn't help you develop interoception. They didn't help you develop the sense to connect with yourself, to know what you truly need, to develop a voice that really honors your alignment and who you are. You just adapted to what they needed,
Yeah.
which was a good kid, a performing kid, right? So if you didn't get that kind of nurturing emotional presence from them, you can't give it to your kids until you start to receive it as an adult and your nervous system starts to recognize that that's what that is. And then when you start to receive it, and I call it through our anchors, through anchoring experiences, through healing experiences. But once you start to receive that and you do that work, you then can start to give that. And that's how we break intergenerational trauma that is passed down in that way.
Yeah, I just, my older kids didn't get that from me. My younger kids have so much more, and their personal awareness and health, their ability to just understand themselves and be okay is so much greater than their older siblings. I've gotten to see it by the span of the children that I've had. You just mentioned interoception, which I had never heard. So I looked it up, or I read about it in your book. I looked it up, and I assume this is the definition I got out of your book: listening to the sensations happening all the time in our bodies. Our bodies have an implicit memory. What came to mind is forgot his name, Body Keeps the Score. Is that in line?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think he actually is having a new book coming out, like Come to Your Senses, but it's all about sensing what's going on in your body. And in my book, I provide meditation separate of the book to start to build interoception. And it's a good chance that many of us, myself included, didn't have parents that sat down with us and started to be with whatever was going on in our body. And they didn't hold us in that way. And so we didn't develop the ability to connect with our bodies. So many of us are dissociated as a form of protection because attachment wounds get stored in the body. So sometimes we need to be dissociated or we become workaholics. Or what I talk about in the book is left hemisphere shifted people. And part of the work of healing attachment wounds is to let the right hemisphere lead, slow down, and to start to build a connection to what the sensations are in our body, because we need to go into the body and hold the sensational memory there in order to heal it, or else we're just kind of avoiding it.
Yeah, which again, I just had no exposure to. You on that. Okay. So on that, connecting, to be able to connect with self again on this, I'm going to ask the question again. Well, in a different way, I guess. I still find the curiosity as I perceive myself to be so unconnected with myself, so not healthfully attached to others in a lot of way. I've been putting a lot of focus on first connection with self. How do you see that? How do you see that playing in at what level? Again, and not as opposed to, but in addition to, alongside the connection with others.
Yeah, I mean, depending on your developmental trauma and where your wounds are, if you were my client and I was an anchoring person for you, I'd be attuning to you and we'd be talking and I'd be like, okay, Kevin, so what I hear you saying, and I'd be tracking you and attuning, and I'd say, where do you feel that in your body? And I would be helping you connect by being in co-regulation with you and helping you see yourself through my reflection. Because what kids need is an accurate reflection of what's going on for them. So in order for you to get aware, you also might need connection to help you process and get into connection with your body. Some people can do it without. I mean, and I provide a lot of somatic experiences, meditations throughout my book. But if wounding exists in our body and it's early, when we connect with it, we also need to bring it to another nervous system. And it's a very important part of healing. So I think what you're saying is I have self-sacrificed, Jessica, my whole life. And in my protective way, I am not going in that direction anymore. I am like a container that wants to really start to connect with me because I have given so much and so much and so much. So I'm learning to first kind of connect with me before I go back into the mode of like fawning or overgiving. So I think that that's also a response to being self-sacrificing for so many years. I had that experience too. But in a healthy dynamic or in an anchoring dynamic, that person can also help you connect to yourself and help you develop kind of fill in the gaps of what your parents didn't do for you. Like, oh, that must have really hurt. Or I can see this is what's happening for you, and be with you in your emotional experience that will help build your ability to connect with yourself.
Yeah, the anchors I hadn't thought of before. Not, I wasn't, I guess, not conscious of, and then realizing, especially going through some of the last few years of acute relational issues, that I would turn to. For me, it was a couple guys specifically. There were other people too, but a couple guys live right here in my town. We do life together, meet every week, and it was a lot of going to them. I would find myself going. I wasn't even looking for affirmation. It was just, I need to check in. Am I losing it? Am I nuts? Is just help me. I guess you said a co-regulation. I hadn't thought about it that way.
Yeah,
That's
safe people to help you anchor you in your experience and help you feel like you're not going crazy and what you feel is very valid. Because, Kevin, you didn't get any of that as a kid. You're going to need a lot of that now to develop a healthy sense of self.
okay. Okay. Let me go right there then. Because in some ways, I would say I was overpraised by my parents.
Praise is different than emotional connection.
Okay. Tell me. Yeah.
Emotional connection is like, oh my God, you're having a bad day. Let me sit down with you. What's going on? What does that feel like? Oh, this is a normal experience. Let me be with you while you got picked on with school, or let me be in these emotional experiences with you. That's very different than, Kevin, you got an A+. Amazing, dude. Kill it. Go get another one, right? Like, those are two very different experiences. We need our parents to be with us through all of our emotional experiences and to join in our emotional experience so that when we are going through something, we feel supported emotionally by them. That's the number one definition of how we get trauma stored in the body, is not by our traumatic experiences. The number one reason of why we store trauma in the body is because something happens to us and we have no one to process it with. So if we process our day, we got picked on the bus, or this really hurt me, or this was wonderful. But if we have a person that can anchor us and process our emotional experience with us, they don't become embedded trauma. Embedded trauma is repeated things happening emotionally and having no place to process that emotional experience, having no joining. So when we don't join at all in any anchoring experience, those experiences get stored in the body because we literally can't process them.
Yeah, Jessica, I am 54. I don't think I even attempted to process I don't think I tried to be aware of an emotion. I didn't have a use for emotions, and I just ignorant. I call it suppressed. I don't know, just so ignorant. I didn't process until, 4 or 5 years ago was the first I ever did it. It just was not a language that I spoke. It wasn't something I participated in. I think people saw me as a very open guy, but I didn't talk about feelings, especially negative feelings. Just there's no place for it. So I didn't experience that for the majority of my life.
And most people haven't. And if we don't grow up in homes that are emotionally present for us and allow us to go through emotional experiences and we feel vulnerable and supported in, we're not going to be comfortable with that because that's not been what we experience. And usually what I see happen, it's also happened for me, is a big life event comes along and we can no longer avoid what's going on inside, and it breaks through. Like I know my mentor, her father died. For me, I went through a breakup. For you, it sounded like a traumatic divorce. So like these big things can happen, and the pain and emotional wounds that are living in our body that we have been disconnected from for years in a way to survive and unconscious of that disconnection sometimes break through. And that becomes the catalyst for us to start doing our own work.
You nailed it. Yeah, absolutely. It broke through, and it was either going to break me or I was going to heal. So I had two choices, and thanks for joining me in the healing. We're still doing it.
I said to my mentor, who's brilliant, I said, did I have to go through all of this in order to heal? And I want people to know this if they buy the book. No, you don't have to go through a giant traumatic experience in order to heal. You can start to build interoception. You can start to get in touch with your childhood embedded memories. You can start your healing right now. You don't have to wait until something kind of breaks through and you can't avoid it. A lot of people do that, but I wish I had started even earlier on the healing process.
I do too, Jessica. There's the other work of self-compassion for myself, because it's difficult to not look back and just
Right.
disappoint myself with, I can't believe I was aware of a lot of things. Man, I missed that one so completely. And there's consequences, but here we are. Tell me, I found myself thinking about, you made some mention in the book to the concept of, I don't know if you use the word, but the opposites attract kind of thing. And I feel like my propensity, what I did kind of with my dad as the avatar, working to get his approval. And it worked. I learned how to do X, Y, Z and quote, earn the approval. It felt good. So I made my little machine there. Now, the person I married was not like my dad necessarily, but that machine that I had, that mechanism worked very similarly. So it was a good fit. So is that where, yeah, that makes sense. I attracted to that. And then I just kept doing that until I finally couldn't.
Yeah, I mean, so I talk about implicit memory, and I talk about this deeply in the book. It's one of the major themes of the book. But we grow up in a home and we develop adaptations and ways to survive. But what we also develop, Kevin, is this is my experience of connection and relationship, and this is what my body expects. So if I want to stay in connection, I need to give myself away. If I want to stay in connection, I need to people please. I'm speaking for you. If I need to, other people are, if I want to stay in connection, I have to keep a distance. Like we all develop not just the idea, like the logical idea, but the felt sense of what we expect to receive in relationship. Mm-hmm. The felt sense of what we know. This is what we know. And it's all we know is what we experienced. So as we get older, what happens is we attract, I shouldn't say we attract, what feels familiar feels right. Because we don't know anything else. Yeah. So often on a conscious and an unconscious level, we will meet someone and they might feel like the one, and they might even show up really well in the beginning. Like your little boy might have been like, wow, she really sees me and I'm really special. But somewhere in that circuit, your adaptations of if she pulls away or if I'm going to start people pleasing and I'm going to start to I'm going to do the very things that my system knows how to do to stay in connection. I'm going to do the very things that my system expects of connection. And I'm going to do the brilliant strategies that I had as a kid. I'm going to play them out in this relationship. And there's a good chance she's probably going to give me a familiar response, because that's usually how the attraction works, right? Because if you attracted someone who didn't fit in those dynamics, they wouldn't feel right. Because they would be unfamiliar to your nervous system, to your patterns. So we usually attract people based on what we know to expect. And we resonate with people. That's why we have to retrain our nervous system. We have to be in the presence of true safety. You have to be in the presence of people who really do see all of you, connect to you, help you connect to you, in order for your nervous system to be like, okay, this is what I need to be around. This is my new normal. I need to prime my system with this kind of safety and this kind of experience so that I attract more of this. And this becomes my new familiar.
Which is, I think I'm still disoriented with how much that's changed. I broke to such a degree that now I look back to what I used to do and it's exhausting even to think about it. My kids have seen a difference in me. My friends do, that I present differently after. To me, it feels like just letting go of the effort that I used to put into it.
And, I don't know if your therapist or your anchors did this, but it's a lot of holding the fear within you that if you don't perform and if you don't people please, like, and if you don't do the behavior, can we be with the anxiety that little Kevin probably feels when he doesn't do what he's supposed to do, right? It's not so much the behavior, but it's the anxiety and the fear that comes when you don't do the very behavior that kept you safe.
It was, to me, we're back to connection. And there was this inherent fear in me that I would lose connection, call it call it love. And I will say to some degree that to the people who mattered most, what I realized is, gosh, when I'm just, I call it authentic me, more secure Kevin, the connection has increased. I would say almost the majority of the connections have increased, and a few broke as a result. And then I was left with, for the first time, I mean, back to, Ingrid's book on fawning, to like, oh my gosh, can I live while I actually wake up in the morning still alive if somebody does not like me? And turns out it actually happened. And I'm, not like I'm thrilled to have somebody not like me, but for the first time, that's okay. That's okay. That's still new territory.
Right. And so if connection is a biological imperative, and for those of you who are listening, the idea is that when we're that small, we develop ways to stay in connection. And the way it's so paramount, like we can't survive without connection. So that's why we adapt according to what our parents need us to be or how we need to behave. But in healthy, secure parenting, they adapt to us being these unique individuals and holding emotional space for us. And so if we don't get enough of that, we're going to just adapt to get our needs met. And so many of us, I think at some point in our life, we have to break through these habitual adaptations to live a more free life.
Goodness. Reading your story, literally, that you, I think, started off the book with, or maybe in the introduction, and you talked about your breakup, being with this person, and then realizing that you didn't feel, I think you said that, you don't feel safe. That got me kind of going down the path of what does safety look like for each of us? Because I think you said in there, it wasn't that you felt physically unsafe. That wasn't it. It was something else. And that got me to thinking, actually, what I thought of is the 5 love languages, the Paramount old book there, of going there. Gosh, people receive love, the feelings of love, in different ways. Is that relevant for safety? That what makes me feel, what I feel safe with relationally, not again, outside of a physical danger or something like that, but just emotionally, physiologically, psychologically, is going to be different for me likely than it is for you. So it's not like there's a set standard of what is safe. It's unique, and we figure that out together.
I think that the threat we feel most is loss of connection. And in my story, I could feel my partner disconnecting, using substances and whatnot. So I think, to answer your question, I think that we long for and need connection, and losing connection in any way can feel threatening to our system. But what I think you might be referring to is that there's a lot of things that we all need to feel quote unquote safe that are the illusion of safety. So if I don't feel comfortable in intimacy and connection, then I need a lot of space in order to feel quote unquote safe. Is that true safety, or is that a protector because I can't handle the connection and what comes up from the connection? So a lot of people need a lot of different things in order to cope with their lives. And they'll put, like, an anxious person needs to feel really close to their partner in order to feel quote unquote safe. But it's the illusion of closeness that keeps them protected from their abandonment wound. So it gets very layered and complicated. But at the end of the day, we all are wired to move towards warm connection. We all can be very scared of lack of connection. And all these other ways that we need to feel quote unquote safe probably are more protectors more than anything else.
Okay, so let's hit that. That's a primary place in your book, the things that we do. And I wrote down, people please, appease, fawn, of course, get approval, get respect, outperform. I had to do more. I had to make sure that I'm doing more, that I'm not slacking. All these things that I did that now in literally, Jessica, it's a term or a thought process that I have, especially when I know I'm I can feel a little insecurity. I can feel a little threat. I can feel whatever. So being in tune with me and going, okay, it's after the deep breath and letting my shoulders down. How would secure Kevin respond? How would a secure Kevin respond? I've been blown away initially, primarily just because I realized it was different than I normally respond. That was like the first level of awareness, maybe of.
Yeah, I think that like your automatic response is the adaptation. Your new response might be someone who connects deeply and figures out what Kevin really wants versus what Kevin is automatically doing and having the awareness to see both of those, to see that, and as we heal, we can see our reactions, we can see our behaviors, and we usually have a caring observer out there, and there's more space to make different choices rather than be unconscious and on autopilot, which many of us are. And implicit memory and implicit responses happen so fast, and the wiring is so, your wiring for fawning or people pleasing is so wired in there. It's a well-worn path. So it's going to take a time to slow down, face the anxiety when you don't take that path, and rework a new pathway in your brain.
Is it fair? I don't know if it's a fair question to ask, Jessica, but as we look at, if you look at your patient load, the people that you're seeing, are there some highlight protectors that come to the surface? Like, man, 75% of people, I see these common protectors. Here are some really common ones, just to call them out. So as people are listening to this, to tune in, if they're listening going, gosh, I bet I do, but I'm not totally sure. If you're unaware of your protectors, what are some highlights?
Yeah, I mean, in chapter 3, I talk about protectors, and I say they're as individuals or fingerprints. And, I could sit here and say social media and eating and alcohol, but the truth is a protector is any compulsive behavior you do in order to manage your feelings. So I could go for a run tonight and it's not a protector. I could feel a tremendous amount of shame right now and have to put my running shoes on in order to cope with what's going on inside. And then running becomes a protector. I could have a glass of wine with my friends and enjoy the night. I could be having a really bad day and needing to numb out my feelings and using wine as a protector. So if you're listening, and protectors are welcomed here, we need protectors. If we didn't have protectors, we'd be suffering all the time, right? I told my therapist once, I'm glad that I'm shopping for skirts once in a while. It means my protector's here and I get a break, to feel and be in the fire all the time and not to have any protection is a really hard way. But I think part of what the book wants you to do and what we want to do is that if we're using these protectors a lot of people are miserable by them. Let's say your protector is an eating disorder, right? That's a hard protector because that can literally make you miserable, right? But we have to understand that an eating disorder or the people-pleasing behaviors and all these things that we're doing are behaviors that are trying to protect you from something deeper that you are struggling being with, that you haven't been able to process. And the more that we can be with the original wound and the original sensational experience and what's going on, the less we need the protector.
Okay, let's dig further. How about just relationally, just this, face-to-face, person-to-person? Because you've mentioned, and you and I align in the people-pleasing, but I've experienced, it feels like some people's protector may be the opposite of people pleasing. It may be conflict. It may be arguing. It may be contention. What are some of the one? Is that fair?
Yeah, I would say that some people, consciously or unconsciously, need chaos in order to feel alive. So it's not so much, it's like calmness and safety doesn't feel like it feels foreign for them. So they'll create chaos consciously or unconsciously because the chaos helps distract them. It helps them feel alive. It helps them feel not numb. So, different levels of awareness and different ways of relating. And I think sometimes disorganized patterns and when we struggle with push pull relationships, it's a lot of people that struggle with the safety and the calmness that comes from safe connection. So they'll create a little bit of chaos. Or control can be one of those protectors. Like I need to feel in control in the relationship. That's another one.
Well, gosh, and I guess is it relevant too that if there is tension, that we're going to go to fight, flight, freeze, fawn. I guess that's part of that. Does that fit in that category?
So like we go to fight, flight, freeze, fawn, collapse, reach out for help automatically based on what our system knows. So when we're constantly scanning our environment every nanosecond for safety or threat, are you with me? Are you not with me? We're scanning, scanning, scanning. If our systems has a real threat or an imagined threat inside our head or in our actual environment, we will drop to one of our adaptive strategies or one of those adaptations. So we go from safety. You and me, Kevin, are safe right now. We're in dialogue. I can see your eyes, our tone of voice. We're communicating. Everything in my nervous system is saying, open up to me. This is a safe dialogue. You're a safe person. You could pick up your phone right now or ignore me or completely check out. And my system might say, oh my God, where did Kevin go? And I might shift into fight, or I might get bigger, or I might shut down. And all of that is in relationship to how I perceive the connection or a loss of connection. I could be talking to you, Kevin, right now, and I could be thinking about something in my head, or something in my head could pop up that is actually scary for me. And my system can also then shift out of a state of safety into a state of activation or deactivation, or not in the state of safety that we're currently in.
You a minute ago said, I think it was when I was referring to me trying to be aware. And if I did right now, if you said something and I don't know, felt threatened or something like that. So I'm going to, okay, how secure Kevin respond? And there's that concept of, okay, what do I need? I've been practicing wrestling with need versus want, and cautious, I guess, in saying, in a relationship, in an intimate one, especially, of going, I don't want to have need. I want connection, but I'm cautious. I'm concerned, I guess, about my level of need. We're kind of back to that. Some of the topics we talked about a little bit, but I still feel like I'm being aware of those, and I'm not conclusive on it. And I'm a little cautious because I don't want to be just an island unto myself. But there's that tendency. I found myself questioning want versus need. Thoughts?
We need connection. And it makes me sad because I think what you're struggling with is, I don't want to get in a place where I'm vulnerable and need connection, and I'm set up in a dynamic where I can't get that connection, or that dynamic reminds me of a painful dynamic, and I don't want to become dependent on someone in that way again. And I don't know if that's your familiar, but
Hey, I'll be candid. It's my show. I can do what I want. So it's connection like this, and with my close friends and my kids. And I mean, I feel very connected, but I will say from, I guess if you want to call it again, like an intimate relationship concept, I can't really conceive of it right now. So I'm looking at it, trying to be sober, and go ahead.
Yeah. Did you, but the vulnerability or the ability to depend on someone intimately, the only thing I think, and no, this isn't a therapy session, is that when you are intimate with someone, it wakes something up in you, and it becomes scarier to depend on them, or in your past, depending on them meant something, and that you're very careful to not get in that same dynamic anymore. I can understand that. And if a young part of you gets waken up and it kind of bleeds into your intimate relationships, it can really dysregulate you. And you could be picking people who can't take care of little Kevin, and you could be passing little Kevin off to not your therapist, but a woman who's just going to injure him, right? And so there's not a lot of safety in those dynamics, and maybe not ready to share those parts of you, or maybe those parts of you are safer shared in relationships that are like anchoring friendships right now. And I feel like you came out of something so long and, so intense. And I know that when I came out of something, not even a fraction of how long that you've been married, that there was a period, and people would call it CPTSD, but really the truth is I didn't feel safe with men for a while. Like that was a protector. Like I didn't want to get close to men. And I remember my therapist saying, and that protector is allowed to be here. That protector is here for a good reason. I didn't feel safe. But over time and with healing, eventually more safety came for me and evolved. But the way I would deal with it is, if you don't feel safe in intimate relationship right now and getting vulnerable and having that need, then that's okay. Let's just be with that, because that protector that you have is here for good reason. And our work together would be, let's discover what that reason is. Let's be with the original reason as to why you feel protected and need to protect yourself right now, and allow yourself to be in that space for right now, because you are really recovering.
This can be a therapy session. You're welcome to invoice me, and we can keep going with it. But I do want to ask with that. It's been a big life change over the past few years, and I've felt a lot of, even as my peace increases, there's also disorientation. I engaged with life and relationships a certain way for a long time. It's no different than I was a pro athlete and a runner, and I did them in supportive shoes, and then I kind of got sold on the barefoot running minimalist thing, and I transitioned. Well, in between, I injured myself. It was very disorienting, is my point. That here I've been just assuming that it makes sense that I would feel disoriented.
I think that part of healing and reorienting to a new way of relating is disorienting for everyone. Like I kind of felt like the rug got pulled out from underneath me as well. So I understand that. And I think everybody, and maybe listeners, like I feel like there's a midlife thing that happens where we also slow down and we're like, okay, am I here? Is this what happiness is? Or is this what, like, we start to question these things. And I think when we have an experience that breaks a paradigm or breaks an adaptive strategy that you have, like people pleasing, it opens our whole world up, because now you have options, and now you're not just in autopilot anymore. Right. And so you're going to disorient before you realign to all these new choices and more space and awareness. And you're not just going along with the same adaptive strategies. Now you're like, wow, I have all of this. But in that process, I feel like there's a little chaos and there's a little disorientation before you feel really secure in, now instead of going to my adaptive strategy of people pleasing, now I'm going to go into connecting with Kevin, figuring out what Kevin wants, figuring out what Kevin needs, and then seeing if I'm brave enough to voice those things, right? And all of that are new to you, but all of that is the missing developmental link. So what you're cultivating now for yourself and your connection with yourself is what you didn't receive from your parents. So that's why, like, we need you to develop that now, so you can kind of live from this place of having options and feeling more free and not having all this fear when you don't people please.
Feeling free. That's been a big part of allowing myself to not be the people pleaser, to not, and again, sometimes it feels weird. Sometimes I have to watch that I don't feel guilt, about the past, even though I look back and go, it didn't work. It didn't work. It didn't end up where I wanted it to be. I do want to be different. And, we can anchor on, this is I think chapter 7 in your book, knowing when to stay or time to go. And I wanted to address again that we acted in XYZ. We acted this way. We adapted, like you said, and we did it for a good reason, and it worked, but it may not be the healthiest way to maintain for the rest of your life now that you're 30, 40, 50, whatever you may be. In healing, as you say,
Mm-hmm.
would it be fair to say you are likely to come to relationships where you may not be able to maintain them if you're not going to act in the same way that you have been, that's been part of the connection, and you're going to come and connect in a different way. Is that somewhat of the point of the chapter, knowing when to stay or time to go?
No, but I could answer that question. I think
Okay.
that for many people who are listening, and if you're in an adaptive strategy in a system, a family system, like a sister or brother or partner, and you start to change, the other person might not like it, right? Like, so if you're a people pleaser or if whatever it is, as you start to become more your authentic self, it could threaten the system in some way. So I think that's, really important. And some people can't handle a more authentic you because they feel comfortable with the you that followed in those patterns and behaviors. So you might lose people as you become more of your authentic self, or you might break patterns and system work in that way. Chapter 7, When to Stay and When to Leave, talks a lot about implicit memory and how when two people's wounds can almost match up so well that we get stuck in such a trauma bond state where most of it talks about narcissistic parents, but it also talks about my wounding and your wounding are familiar enough where I can't separate my need to help, save, or be with you versus what I need in order to take care of myself. So if you remind me of a sick parent, or you remind me of someone who needs help and it resonates with my childhood, I will override certain things and I will self-sacrifice, or I will over-identify with you, and there'll be merging of boundaries. And some people with early wounding need a little bit of individual work before they're really capable to have healthy, intimate relationships. And so I talk about intensity, and I talk a lot about the narcissistic bond, and I even talk about borderline. And I look at these personality structures as all complex infant trauma, because that's what they are. They all go back to attachment. They all go back to early attachment bonds. They all go back to that place. So I want the reader to understand narcissism on another level, to build some compassion for that little child in there, and have boundaries, and understand that some relationships are not going to be healthy containers for us to grow together in. So that chapter is really trying to explain how trauma bonds or trauma familiarity overlaps, and when that can cause more harm, and how freaking hard it is for us to leave our familiar. Right? You said you've been married for a long years. I was in a relationship, and I was living in my childhood home with my partner, and my childhood home was with a dad who had a lot of substance abuse issues. There was a lot of neglect, and my partner had substance abuse issues at the end. And my child inside just kept trying to do what she did as a little girl with a dad who wasn't able to connect. And as soon as I was able to wake up and be like, oh my God, this isn't even about my partner. This is about the memory of me trying to connect with someone who's unavailable. And instead of trying to connect with him, I need to connect with people who are going to hold this part of me that's so dysregulated because he's not online. He's so checked out. And my therapist and anchors were smart enough to be like, this is really about your dad. This is memory coming up. And I was able to separate the trauma bonding pattern I had with him and like make this about my original wound and break that paradigm. And that's really what chapter 7 is about. Like 6 and 7 is about, 5 is about your original attachment patterns, the wheel of attachment. 6 is about the patterns that are showing up now. And 7 is about what patterns are, what trauma bonds are you living in, and how can you break free from those cycles or those repeating patterns?
Okay. Well, then to end on chapter 8, when we heal, what are
I mean, that my testimony is, it's hard for me to, it's so much more peace, so much more peace. And even to, if there is any conflict, any relational conflict, I can still go to sleep at night. I didn't used to be able to. If there was, just screw it. I might as well work or read a book or do something like that. I couldn't sleep. And now just know, and I know that, oh my gosh, there's something in the past that would have wrecked me for the day. And I'm going to go to sleep and I'm going to watch my sleep scores and it's going to be a good sleep score anyways. I mean, so I don't know how to depict it more than peace, but I wanted to ask, what are some of the primary, I mean, we talked about, freedom and a lot of words we get attached, but what are the literal ones that you hear when people fall out of or heal out of these patterns and find
Yeah,
out?
I mean, well, that healing for you came with a lot of work with being with the parts of you, I'm sure, that were scared about disappointing and overriding that anxiety in order to get to a place where you have options. And so healing, I mean, I could talk about, and I should talk about all the wonderful things, internalizing anchors, feeling a sense of security, feeling free to build lots of different attachments, not being stuck in one relationship, not feeling like you're in survival mode. And healing in the book, and if you're listening and you buy the book, I really explain the neuroscience around healing, because as you're being anchored and as you're getting in touch with your wounds, it's not like 1, 2, 3 and you're done, right? It's a process. Healing is being really uncomfortable. And what I wanted to provide in SAFE was the neuroscience grounded me in the harder days when I was really struggling. I could turn to the science and understand how the embodied brain worked and understand reflex, response, and understand how other people's nervous system impacts me. I could turn to the science and know and even feel that I was on a healing path. And I think I want people to understand the science so that it's not just like, oh, let's heal your inner child. No, I want you to understand memory. I want you to understand neural nets. I want you to understand your brain and your embodied brain and your nervous system and what healing feels like and how it unfolds, so that people have that to ground themselves in what can be a long process.
Jessica, thanks. Thanks for the therapy session. I love what I do, and getting to explore these and to hear different perspectives and to hear from your experience. You're on the front lines with it, and having experienced it yourself. I appreciate your own story, and what to me is the humility and vulnerability in your book, even as you are also an expert in it. So I love the combination. Thank you for your insight and investment in me today. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. And yeah, it was hard to be vulnerable, but I'm out there. I want to share 2 things in the link that I provided you. If you buy the book today, you get a free Beyond the Labels link. So the wheel of attachment goes straight, check your spam, goes right there. And then I have a 40-minute conversation of me and my mentor. She wrote Heart of Trauma. She's like people that teach us. She's just an anchor for me. She's amazing. We talk about what it feels like in the body to go from insecurity to security. And it's a really great conversation. So you get those 2 free gifts immediately. You just fill out the form in the link that I provided Kevin. And I'm on Instagram, Jessica Baum, LMHC. Reach out to me. Let me know if you buy the book and it resonates with you. And I have an online coaching business called the Conscious Relationship Group. So there's a team of therapists. We all work with attachment, wounds, and healing. So that's another way to find me as well. So thank you, Kevin, for having me. And I hope your listeners go out and buy the book and better understand this and find a path to healing and freedom.
I do too. I've got it. So I'm with you. Thank you, Jessica.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for joining us in this discussion. That again is Jessica Baum, Baum. Just type that in. You'll find all her social media, websites, media, news aspects, and everything. The book that again was my catalyst here that I referenced quite a bit is called SAFE, an attachment-informed guide to building more secure relationships. If you hear this right away this episode, it's coming out or has come out this week. Well, hey, till next time, thank you. And here is to the evolving you.
Yeah.